Remote working, contingent workforce, and service delivery are becoming a vital part of organizations' operating models. Some employers are already hiring digital nomads, so they can work from anywhere at any time. While COVID-19 has generated a lot of uncertainty on the future of work, one thing is certain: flexibility will be part of our next normal. That said, we will be living, at least for some time, in a tax and social security environment that changes constantly. During this episode, we will talk with Sévernie Moca, Deputy Head of HR here at PwC Luxembourg. She will share with us her thoughts regarding the future ways of working and will enlighten us on the impacts that they will have in terms of taxation and social security. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Hi Sévernie, thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm pretty well, thank you very much. I'm just coming back from the festive season, so I'm very fine.
Okay, well then let's move on to formally introduce you now. You are Deputy Head of HR at PwC Luxembourg. You've been working with us for almost 20 years. During all this time, you mainly worked in the field of personal taxation, and you recently joined our HR department. I think it was back in July. And before deep diving into the topic of this episode, tell us more about yourself. Who is Sévernie Moca?
Who I am? So, a long story. So, I'm French, but you may have heard that. I started at PwC, so as you mentioned, so it was 19 years ago. I'm a PwC baby. So that was really my first job. I started as an assistant because I had a bachelor. I made my studies in Luxembourg in École de Commerce et Gestion. And then I was hired in it was TBP department, which became ECF department. And I really loved working in the global mobility field during 18 years because it was really focused on people, on their taxation as well. So money is everything. And it was also very cultural because I was really talking with people coming from everywhere with issues in terms of taxation, but not only. So it was really interesting. And that's afterwards, so I started a mission within the HR. So it started in January 21. And I really loved discovering this HR world with a lot of, I would say, various people, various topics, and a lot of challenges. And so afterwards, I accepted to move definitely to this department. I hope I will be able to build something and that I will be able also to help the team to continue to grow.
Yeah, so we were all excited when you joined us, and I hope this new challenge is as exciting as the one you had for the last few years in the tax department. So maybe let's move on to the hot topic of the minute with COVID. The impact of flexibility on taxation in the workplace. So companies' operating models are changing, triggered or even pushed by remote working, contingent workers, or even service delivery. This shift has accelerated since the beginning of COVID-19. Have you ever seen such tax changes in a short period of time?
No. So when I was working for the clients, I already heard a lot of them complaining about the lack of flexibility that is offered in Luxembourg. But Luxembourg is really an atypical country because compared to other countries, we are in the middle of Europe and we have a lot of our population that is cross-border, meaning that I'm talking about 200,000 people in Luxembourg that are cross-border, so living in France, Belgium, and Germany and commuting every day. And this means that if we talk about remote or home-based working, then we face automatically some constraints in terms of taxation, regulatory aspects, personal data, etc. And we see the appetite of companies and people to be more flexible and to allow better flexibility. However, the tax environment and the social security environments are not really following for the time being. So the intention is clearly to change our model. I'm talking about PwC, but also with other firms in Luxembourg. But we need also to ensure that we are not at risk and that our employees are not at risk if we allow them to work a certain number of days or period of time from abroad. So that's really the trend we see. What I also saw is our young population is always now asking about flexibility, but flexibility means everything and nothing. So we really need to ensure that we are all on the same page. So flexibility for us, it means that, yes, working from everywhere, that's really a point, but also in terms of time. So can I also start working earlier in the morning and or late in the evening also to satisfy the client needs? So flexibility, or as well, so we can also think about having a week of 4 days instead of 5. There are a lot of things that are really covering flexibility. We just need to ensure that we respond to what our people and what the people are asking as well.
Mm-hmm. And so you feel with COVID-19, this asking for more flexibility has been...
What we saw before is we had many companies that were just saying, I don't want my people, I really want them to work a bit from home, but I do not trust them. It was really the lack of trust that was the main issue. And it was more from leaders of companies that were, I think that if my employee is working from home, he will not really be working, he will be arranging his own affairs. What we saw with COVID is more efficiency for people, because they were really focused on the work, and then we were obliged to trust them. And finally, it was a success, and it is still a success. So that's also now what people are asking for. So you've seen that I was working a lot, that I was flexible when I was working from home. So I want to still to have this kind of flexibility after COVID. But again, now, the good point is companies are now ready to change this way of thinking and their own model, but they need, again, to restrict and to limit this to the tax and all nice words around regulatory, etc., to ensure, again, that people are not at risk. Because we always talk about tax, social security, but we need also to talk about insurance of our people. If you work from anywhere, are you covered if there is something happening for you? So, and that's, in many cases, things that are not anticipated by people. And when you talk with them about this, they say, I didn't get it. Or if I'm working during a long period of time outside of Luxembourg and then my computer is crashing, what can I do? I will not be able to work for a certain period of time. So, and that are now a lot of questions that were not raised before, because it's more operational questions. And I think we will still have a lot coming if we continue on this with this kind of model.
So what I've seen on social media, which is becoming more and more a trend, is these work from anywhere, anytime kind of jobs. And I think you also pointed some of the issues out. It's like health insurance coverage. What is if you have a technical problem? So I don't feel like people are necessarily thinking about this when they think about flexibility, because there's so much more behind what's happening that employees don't necessarily see on a daily basis. And we in HR or working for personal taxation, we have a whole different kind of view.
Yeah, and we need also to think about different, I would say, activities. I think clearly there are some jobs that you can, I would say, do wherever you are. There are others where you need maybe to be close to people, or also companies where we talk about the sense of belonging. So you need also to be part, and here I'm more talking about companies like Big Four, when we have a young population coming, where we attract them also not only with the work, but with everything around the work. And if we say to all of them, then you can work from anywhere full time, then what they can have, where is the fun? So we really need to find, I would say, a good balance. And that's where it's very tricky, because in one sole company, you can have people that need to have the fund, and you can also have people from specific department that can say, my work can be done fully remotely. And that's really for me the critical point, is trying to fit to the needs of every people in the same company with different competencies.
Find the right way that suits everyone. I think what PwC did was great because it allowed us still flexibility on coming when I'm coming to the office, and also for those wishing to come more, well, they were able to come. Because what I also gathered from all the interviews I did, that especially young people, they come to the Big Four because we have so many other young people. It's such a dynamic environment and also a great place to network that only working from home would not offer all those advantages.
And we need also to consider that because of the lack of talent, we are also recruiting people from abroad, and not from abroad like 30 kilometers from the office. It's really for third countries, or I would say other countries. We really need to ensure that this population is well onboarded and is also welcomed by our people. We cannot ask people to move from a country to Luxembourg with no family, standalone, and then when they're working in Luxembourg, you say, okay, you can work from home, and then you stay you stay home in your small apartment. I think it's really difficult to find the right match, but it's something we need to think about, and we are already thinking about for the future. What we did, a comparison with other companies, we didn't impose things. A lot of companies were really, during that period, that tough period, they were really imposing 1 week every 2 weeks, a kind of rotation, or really dedicated days where people were obliged to be in the office. We still remained flexible at PwC. We didn't force our people. We just said, okay, we put some rules because we also want to ensure that our new people are onboarded correctly. But we really didn't say that every Monday you should be there and we're Tuesday, etc. So it was clearly something because we trusted our employees, and we also want to be in line with their expectation.
No, I get that. Because the employee also had the feeling, I can speak for myself, that I was able to plan the days around also my personal life. Because if you have a doctor's appointment, you can't always take the entire day off just to go to the doctor's appointment. So I was able to figure like my week out in function also of what I had planned, what was coming up for me, also what was coming up at work. I knew in advance. So we tried also to schedule meetings 1 to 2 weeks in advance. So I knew, okay, that day I have to be at the office. I just was able to plan it out for me, which was perfect. And moving on a little bit, at least, from the COVID topic. So in Luxembourg, in terms of tax implications, what are the differences between cross-border workers like ourselves and people living in Luxembourg when both are doing home-based working?
So in principle, we have specific dedicated rules. So in fact, people need to stick also to their residency country rules. So if someone is deciding just to say, okay, I don't want to live in Luxembourg for any reason, I would live in France, they also need to ensure that they are following the rules in France. And we have specific agreements for taxation, for social security, etc. Without the COVID, so outside the COVID rules, we have a kind of limitation of days, meaning that I'm French cross-border, my salary should be fully taxable in Luxembourg to the extent that I'm working fully in Luxembourg. If I'm commuting outside of Lux, or if I'm doing some remote work, home-based work, these days should be considered as potentially French days, so taxed in France. That's really in standard rules. We have a threshold that will be entering in force, which is 34 days, meaning that French residents working more than 34 days outside of Luxembourg during a year will become liable to taxation on these days in France. And then you have a kind of split taxation, so then it's become a bit more complex. Not less interesting, but more complex in terms of management. With the COVID, so all the governments agreed to, I would say, to have specific exceptions to allow people to work from home without having any tax or social security implication, meaning that people were able to work safely from France, Belgium, or Germany, with no impact in terms of taxation for them or social security. So everything remained the same as in the past for them. And that's also the reason why people say, yes, it's really great and it's neutral. And then I also can, I would say, save money because of my car and I don't have parking issues, blah, blah. Yes, indeed. But it remained an exception because the governments agreed on a temporary basis because of this COVID crisis. And as an information, so we have the agreement that continues until 31st of March for tax and social security, meaning that we are still covered for 3 months. Let's wait and see for the future. But if afterwards we don't have further agreements, this means that people need really to monitor. So to monitor their days, they will be working from their home. They need also to have some policies. We cannot do what we want without having some HR policies. We need to fix some rules. We need to have people that also self-declare themselves on specific tools. I'm thinking about other companies as well, because and what a lot of companies and a lot of people are missing is, in fact, it's really the responsibility of the employer to know where their employees are based. That's really in the legislation. So it's not that maybe, Anne-Catherine, tomorrow you say, I don't want to come to the office and I work from home and I don't say anything to anybody. No. So during the COVID measures, we are fine. But after the COVID measures, and if you are not resident of Luxembourg, it's really key that you give this information to the HR, that they are aware that as a non-resident, you are not working from the office and you are working from another country. You need to be covered for social security. You need to also to respect some threshold and to respect, I would say, agreements and the policy that is put in place. It's complex. I know that what I'm saying is a lot of information and it's complex, but here at the end, it's more a matter of reporting and ensuring that policies are really set up correctly.
So it's also responsibility of the employer to have a tool where people can easily declare where they're working from, as well as all the monitoring and policy process.
In an ideal world, I would say yes. Unfortunately, it's always complex to have a dedicated tool to ensure that everything is managed properly in the place.
We're trying our best. But you already mentioned that France in 2021 increased the numbers of days you're able to work from home. Do you think that those maximum days are set to increase again in the future?
But Belgium, they changed it last year as well. Huh? So just maybe to summarize for all these neighboring countries. So France, they agreed last year on 34 days, instead of 29. Belgium, they agreed also last year, it was 24 days and it came up to 34 days. And Germany, they are still at 19 days. So depending on the country where people are residing, they really need also to focus and to stick to these days. Again, these days are not really that you cannot exceed this threshold. Then it's also the responsibility of the company to say whether or not they allow people to work a bit more. And if they allow people to work a bit more, this means that they will be liable to taxation in those countries as well on a portion of their income. Mm-hmm. Then are you ready to bear more taxes in Belgium on a portion of your income compared to Luxembourg? That's more afterwards an individual choice. So people will tend to say, okay, I can agree finally, I decide to work 40 days a year from Belgium. Then you will be taxable on these 40 days in Belgium. So you may have to bear additional taxes in Belgium because of this. But you can say also, I agree to bear a bit more because I'm also having more flexibility and I avoid traffic jam, etc., etc. So again, I'm coming back to the fact that it's more an individual choice. The biggest point is really to ensure that you respect the rules of your employer and what the company is putting in place. many companies in Luxembourg are just saying that they just stick to this threshold and they don't allow their employees to work more than this threshold in their home country.
Mhm.
But it's really a company decision afterwards.
Yeah. And then if the employee is also okay to give a little bit of salary towards the taxation in his home country, let's say.
I think it's not really the trend because it's more the individual choice of people.
Yeah.
So.
And to finalize or to sum the episode up, what would be your advice for recent graduates entering the workforce for the first time? Also, people maybe wanting coming to Luxembourg and being kind of lost of what they have to pay attention to, and where could they find more information about this topic?
So there are a lot of information already available. If you just go on LinkedIn, and I know that the young population is well connected, so I trust they get our information. There are a lot of information around taxation. The first point where young people are coming is just to say, where do I want to be a resident? Where I will be a resident. So if you decide, if you can also be a resident of Luxembourg, then all these kind of issues, you won't have them because you are working in Luxembourg. You can work from home more than maybe the non-resident because you don't have these rules. So that's really the first question you can ask yourself is, where would I become resident? So should I choose a foreign countries, but then I can have some limits in terms of rights for home-based working or remote working? Or can I become resident of Luxembourg? But it's also a matter of money because it's a bit expensive between you and me. And if I can be resident of Luxembourg, then I will have more flexibility. I will have less cost. So the cost of the housing is higher, but then I don't have cost also for public transport. I don't have, I would say, all the additional small tax costs that we have in the neighboring countries, the property tax, the revenu cadastral in Belgium, and all these nice gifts we can have as well. It's really, that's really the first thing I would advise to people. It's really thinking about the best place for them to be living. For people who are coming from abroad and from third country, living in Luxembourg is really the best place because then you also have the city life. So you have the nightlife. It's not that you just come to Luxembourg for work and then you take the train and you go back home and then you are on a standalone basis in your apartment or in your house in the other country. If you are in Luxembourg City, the co-living is also really developing itself. So it's really a trend now in Luxembourg. We are a bit delayed compared to Brussels or Paris, for sure. But it's starting also now growing. We have a lot of companies. It could be also an idea. So I will not be emphasizing only on tax, etc. It's more on where someone is coming to Luxembourg to ensure that his onboarding to a company will be good. We need also, he or she needs also to ensure that its onboarding to the country and to Luxembourg will be great.
Yeah, I agree. I personally decided to stay in Belgium for some reasons. Because as much as I love Luxembourg, for me personally, it was important to have that physical distance between the office and the place where I live, just to in the evening be like, okay, I'm off work, I'm at home. No PwC people because we are all around the city in Luxembourg. You go to a restaurant, you can mostly be sure to meet someone from the company.
If you work in the Big Four, you cannot be anonymous in Luxembourg.
Not at all. Not at all. But I think that's also one of the fun parts of working for a Big Four, because no matter where you go, you meet people who either are working for PwC or who have worked in the past for the company, and it's like directly a discussion opener.
I agree.
Makes it a lot easier. Well, thank you so much for your time, Séverine, and thank you also for the advice. I think it will help a lot of younger people. And keep enjoying the time with the HR department. I hope the changes are coming in and keeping you excited.
Thank you very much, Anne-Catherine, for this interview. It was a real pleasure.
That's it for today's episode, and if you don't want to miss out on our upcoming stories, hit subscribe and feel free to share. Let us know what you think. Thank you for listening, and see you for the next episode of Casual Side.